I'm gonna be here anyway.
I'm back.
Everybody gets to play.
Ready whenever y'all are. Yeah.
Before I had children.
I'll let you get wrapped up.
And all that.
Let me show you something. You can walk from here to the table. See yourself on TV?
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
How are you? Good to see you.
Yeah, what's it?
I'm taking it on today.
Alright, welcome everyone. But now show that Nazi is coming. Good morning. Good morning. Thank you for being here. It's my pleasure to welcome you to this Sunday Forum. Special thanks to those of you joining us here and everyone online. Thanks for being here. Our presenter today is familiar to many of you and returns to St. John's after many years to share his story. James Kassaga Arinaitwe is here to share about his experience with Solar Light for Africa, a venture that we supported, and he's going to talk to us about his current work with Teach for Uganda. James has been in Tallahassee this week, serving as FSU's 2022 Board Lecturer on International Relations. He is currently the CEO and co-founder of Teach for Uganda, a nonprofit organization with the vision of helping all children in Uganda attain an excellent education in order to thrive in a constantly changing world. He's here today with his grandmother, Judy Colbreth, and many other family members. So please help me welcome James.
Thank you, Mary. Good morning.
Good morning.
So I'm going to start like we do in Uganda. So we say, God is good. And that is his nature. Okay, praise God. Yeah, so we say God is good, and we say God is good, and that is his nature. Yes. So I am very blessed to be here after 18 years. Wow. 18 years. And you will forgive me, it gets a bit emotional for me because in 2001, well, let's start in about 1999, right? Right before Bishop Alden Hathaway and the team from St. John's Episcopal Church started Solar Light for Africa. And it kept doing missions in Africa, providing solar light in schools, clinics, and very impoverished homes for people to have light. Today in Uganda, just to give a bit of context, about 60% now so far, close, yes, have some kind of light. It can be solar or electricity. But there's still a huge percentage of people living, 40% of the population, living in rural communities without light. So when in 2001, I had just graduated, I was a teenager, graduated out of high school, and I was working in a small factory downtown Kampala, which is the capital of Uganda. And my caretaker at the time asked me to join this solar light mission. Because at that time I was serving in the factory, I was lifting boxes, trying to make some living for myself and my grandmother. And so my story of how I came to Tallahassee begins there. And my dear friend I didn't catch your name. I need to make sure.
It's a Peyton.
Peyton, thank you. We can start there and let's put in the slide view mode. Okay. So I was born and raised in a rural village in southwestern Uganda. Uganda borders with Kenya and Tanzania to the south. Rwanda, the country that had genocide, to the southwest, and South Sudan to the north. For those to get the context. In the 1990s, late 80s when I was born, early 80s, HIV was a big problem in Uganda. And by the age of 4, I lost my 2 sisters to measles, and then my mom and dad HIV. My mom was 6 years old, and my dad fought with it until I was 10 years old. By the time I was actually finishing primary school, I was being raised by this woman, my grandmother, on a small plot of land, as you can see with our bananas in the background, and 2 cows. You can go forward, please. In my community, we are cow herders. We raise cows, milk the cows, and that's how we survived. But when I was finishing primary school, my community or county did not have where to sit for national exams. So at grade 7 in Uganda, all children, no matter where you are in the country, right now we have 15 million of those children in primary school. So all 15 million children must sit this national exam. And it actually determines your future. Because if you don't pass this exam, you don't go on secondary school, and probably you're not likely to ever get a job. So I sat this national exam right after my dad had passed. I would walk barefooted 15 kilometers and then 15 kilometers back. I had that milk kept me going. I would take a cup in the morning and a cup at school. And when I needed lunch, I had to go look for a borehole, water. You see a borehole there, water to drink. So quickly, and we lived in this hut, as you can see. This is our hut, where we lived with my grandmother. And you see this other little boy, my grandmother, after my dad passed, HIV went through my family like a wildfire. My dad had 4 brothers, they all passed away. And so my grandmother inherited 10 more orphans, next up to me. So the resources were strained. Right after those exams, the national exams I sat, I was the best in the 4 schools in the county. So, yes, amen. Thank you. So, then that presented another challenge. So my grandmother goes to her church, she says, well, my grandson, well, at this point I was like her son, because all the sons had passed, but this is like my son. He's the best in the county, so could we please get him a secondary school scholarship? And so after church like this, the elders would sit in the church, my church of Kempungu, and they said, you always have so many problems, you bother us with your orphans. So one gentleman, like this gentleman standing there, said, I have an idea. You should send your grandson to the president of Uganda. He's the only one who can ensure he finishes even university. So Kaka, as I call her, my grandmother, she looks at me and says, James Kassaga, that was we are going to go find a way to find the president of Uganda. So, yeah, just like you have, I looked at her and said, I think maybe you're getting, we won't say it. I mean, respectfully, I thought my grandmother, something was getting wrong. Because then, my dad had sold all the cows. We had only 1 cow remaining and 1 goat. So, my dear friend, you can go to the next one. Patent. Hopefully it will allow you to go.
It's just...
It's a bit slow. So, at that point, Skaka said, well, there's no problem. We're going to sell this 1 goat, but we must get you to the president. But I said, how? He said, don't worry. God will go with you. And I think for me, that's where my faith began. She says, God will go with you. And I was hesitating, but what about this God who let my parents go? The same thing that our dear priest was sharing. What kind of God would take away everything and has to send me on the road by myself at 11 years old to go find the president I didn't know about? They didn't even have an idea that I was coming. Remember, at that time, there were no cell phones. So, long story short, Arinaitwe, my last name, means God is with us. So God was with me. It took me 3 months going by myself on a bus. I got there after 2 days. There was one bus that would rotate around the entire region, and you had to get it at 5 a.m. and it will get to your destination by 7 p.m. and then people would wait for it the next day. This is in 1994 Uganda. Finally, I got to where I was going. I can go through all that. I'm writing the book. And when I landed, it was dark and there was no electricity. There was one little light, a little shop at the bus stop. I went to that light by faith. And there was a woman selling tea to the passengers, had little one table like this, and she got a cup of tea and a slice of bread, gave it to me, and a mat, and said, you can sleep under my table because I only have one room where I sleep. I slept under there. In the morning, she said, oh, here, I will give you another cup of tea and bread, but I can't take you to the president. That's the road. And the road, I had to find it. The road looked like that. It literally, from that place to the president's gate, it wasn't paved at the time, and it would take you literally about 2 hours walking at the pace I would walk at 11 years old. I knocked at that presidential gate. I would come back, that woman, she would host me for 3 months. Finally, someone who was loving enough said, I have seen this boy so many times, took me inside and got me to the father of the president. It was the father of the president who finally got me to the first lady of Uganda. That first lady of Uganda, before that, my dear, that first lady of Uganda, she said, you don't need to worry now, we shall provide for your education. And she gave me a caretaker, Mama Penny, the woman who raised these children, and you can see I'm right there. So I got new shoes, new everything, and I started now, not in the school where I was admitted, but in Kampala. So it was that place in Kampala after high school. Now I had gotten some energy, I had gone through high school, and I was working in this factory when she said there's a group from Solar Light for Africa led by Bishop Alden Hathaway, who was from St. John's, and actually, and other parishioners were from St. John's, and the youth from St. John's Episcopal Church that had come to Uganda. And I said, oh, I'll take a break, my friend. I'll take a break and go and work with these people. And so for me, that it was fun because I had to take solar light to the villages where I knew my grandmother did not even have solar. But the joy was that I was providing solar for those that did not have light. And it didn't matter whether my grandmother did not have. All I knew was I was going to be of help to those who needed help. And little did I know that by choosing that, it would forever change my life. I stepped on that bus. There was a wonderful woman called Sherry Rain. And she came out and said, that is James. And I remember, she may not remember this, she gave me an Old Navy with the American flag on it. Old Navy t-shirt. I wore that t-shirt with so much joy. I met a community of young people. My roommate was a young man whose family was going to St. John's, but he was going to University of Florida, the Gators. Yeah, God has a sense of humor, right? So, Paul Hunt, I remember him very well, big, tall guy. He would teach me push-ups, our skinny would play together, he would teach me football. But whenever we would come to climb up to the roof, Paul and I would just go. I remember we did so much work. We actually went up to Rwanda at the time, Kigali, and we were putting solar light panels. They trained us. Bishop's son was an electrical engineer, so they trained us how to do wiring. I was light, not as big as I am now. So climbing up the roof was very easy. So James up, I would be up. So I remember I was up wiring in Kigali, Rwanda, after the genocide, and they were in this children's home. There were children, hundreds of them, traumatized by the war. And I remember up and putting light, and there were children with all kinds of trauma. They would hear any noise of the banging like this, and they would go like this. And any hammering, they would just go like this. And I remember asking the caretaker and said, why are they doing like that? They were traumatized. And I think for me, then, my own story and these children, I could relate. And I think it was then that I felt God was leading me that one day, I should serve children. I should help children in some way. My passion was to go to medical school, and I'll share that. So when I met Mama Cheri, we did all this work. Every morning we'd run, eat, have a wonderful time. We ate all kinds of food. I even remember my first swimming experience was when we were with the Americans. We go to the hotel, swimming, I jumped in. I don't even know whether I had a swimsuit or not. It was so much fun. On the last day, as they were planning to return, we had a wonderful dinner when the Americans were returning, and we would have to eat together, share stories, and that day came that Hall and I had to share our story. So Hall Hunt, my roommate, remember, came out, shared his story, and now we said, James, it is your turn. I had never shared my story with strangers. This time I had to. And so I remember coming, like I'm here nervously, and have to share my whole testimony to strangers. And at that time, I broke down, and I remember it was this lady, Miss Cheryl Rainey, who stood up and came and hugged me and cried with me and said, you don't need to worry, God will take care of you. And she whispered in my ear and said, what about I bring you home to the US? My husband and I would love to send you to school. And I remember she was saying that the whole group stood up, and by the time I knew it, I had people surrounding me. And it was like building a heart around me. There was all these hands around me, building a heart around me. And I felt so warm and so loved and so protected. After that, life changed. She said, I won't come back to Uganda anymore, but I'm gonna talk to my husband and see whether we can provide you an education. Well, surprisingly, the next day, 2002, she was there with her husband, Papa Russ. I think she decided to come back and worked so hard, and she said, you have to sit the national exams, rather you have to sit the TOEFL exams, test of English as a foreign language, to apply to Tallahassee Community College. So we applied, put in everything. Papa Russ brought us Oral-B toothbrushes. I remember very well, at dental floors, I was walking around, I was smiling, and I thought, oh, yeah, it's fantastic. Yeah, so I applied to TCC, and luckily I got in, but it took a while, because in 2001, most of you remember what happened around September. That was the year I was supposed to matriculate to join TCC. In fact, Mama Cheri and Papa Russ were bringing me with another sister of mine, one of Mama Penny's children here. But there was no scholarship allowed or any international students allowed after September 11. And so I was in limbo. So I went back to my knees. Like that psalm that we read today that says, you know, when God is with you, I shall not fear, I shall not be afraid. He's my present help in time of need. God is my present help in time of need. And I held on to that scripture like my life meant it. And finally, in 2003, they said you can send the documents. They went through everything. And they denied me the visa, said, well, they must send all their financials to prove that actually they are going to. They denied me the visa the first time. And in 2004, they said, they actually called me from home, said, now you are clear, James, you can come and pick your visa. I remember landing here in Tallahassee. The dates are very clear to me. It was August 7th, 2004. If you look on the dates, that Sunday, we were here in this church, in those pews, praising God. And I remember probably even the priest mentioned about us, me and Laura, making it to Tallahassee. And we thanked God. And August 23, we started at TCC. 4 students. Mom went with us, got my first book bag, got my first books, went to the bookstore, TCC bookstore, got my books. You can remember the joy. It was the most joyful experience of my life. I was going to college. And because of that, I did not take it for granted. I graduated with 72 hours from TCC. I had no B, I had all A's. And I was the student graduation speaker of 2006, the spring. And TCC and FSU gave me a full scholarship to come to FSU. And in 2017, they honored me with that wonderful opportunity. I came to FSU, but at the same time, thank you, my dear, at the same time, I was still under the Episcopal University Center, Ruji Hall. Some of you may not know it, but this was in 2007, 8, 9, until I graduated with undergrad. And this wonderful place here, you may not know, inside, not only did we have church, we had music, we had dance, we ate wonderful food, we prepared meals, and also we went to Disney World. I was under Father Brad. And this group here, you can see I am right here, that's Lori behind, and I was telling them, you remember the telephone booths? There is a replica at Disney World, and we were all trying to fit in here, trying to see, can this booth hold us? And this was one of the most joyful experiences for me. I bonded with my fellow friends. We are still in touch with some of these wonderful people. And I thrived at FSU. And no wonder I was able to do well because of the love I received from this church and the Episcopal University Center, Hall. And I was able to graduate and went on to get my master's at FSU. We can go next. So, as you can see, I didn't do that poorly, right, Mama Judy? I did some work at FSU, and FSU, I was honored with this, it's a Reubin O'D Askew Award. It's for alumni who are working hard to make our world a better place. So while I was at FSU, I actually had several awards, but the joyful for me, I remember, was we were working under the Center for Global Engagement, and I think there's a picture here that if it allows to come up, I know this is still my grandmother. That's the heart. I think there's a picture somewhere. Let's see, maybe it's not here. No, can't go back. Yeah, it's not here. It was in the one at FSU, where we had to go. I would serve every spring break. I would go to Kansas City, Missouri. I would work with children who were affected by education inequity, who are not having meals. There was a group called Operation Breakthrough. There were these two wonderful old ladies from the church created this place. It was like 500 kids. So we would work with them, teach them. I would go to Washington, D.C., work with people with HIV and AIDS. A lot of HIV and AIDS, actually, I didn't know, in the Hispanic and African American community in Washington, D.C. So I was there working with them, sharing my own story, how they should use contraception and all that. We worked with Bosma Enterprises. It's not here. It was a place in the picture at FSU I showed. I was painting an entire warehouse with my friends during spring break because apparently visually impaired people could not access their computers unless the warehouse is painted all white. So we painted a warehouse of like literally this whole entire complex white. And Bosma Enterprises was working with the visually impaired to access computers, HP computers, learn from them, use Braille, and be able to also do services for themselves to earn a living. So for me, that's what gave me joy. So by the time I finished all this, I knew very well I had the opportunity now to go to President Jimmy Carter Center in Atlanta, and I worked there for at least the summer of 2009. And these wonderful people right here are very influential in me being at President Jimmy Carter Center's place in Atlanta. And I have a story that for me, I remember very well from this wonderful gentleman. And I hope there is a picture somewhere in there. You can see if it's there.
I think that was the other lecture.
There's, I don't know whether I have that one. Oh, there. Oh, there it is when I was, this is where I was at Bosma Enterprises. Yeah, so you can see I'm painting with my friend and see, we had to go up all the way to paint all this warehouse. And every layer here, you may not see, they were supposed to stack up computers. So this visually impaired community, they assembled computers and they would make a living out of that. And this is downtown Indianapolis, Indiana. But there is a picture for President Jimmy. So this gentleman, now he's 98 or so. I have so much and depth of respect and love for him. He came to us. First of all, he took us to his home, his boyhood home. And I learned that he was a peanut farmer, a very humble peanut farmer who rose to be a governor and then president of the United States, most powerful country in the world. And so he came with all humility. First of all, he prayed with us in his church, in his boyhood hometown. Then when he came to the Carter Center, he came and spoke to us like human beings. I said, James, from Uganda. What an honor. I have been to Uganda so many times. We have fought river blindness, we have fought trachoma, we have done, what do you want to do with your life? I said, President, my dream was to be a doctor, but my heart is always with the children. He said, well, if you want to make a difference in the world and you follow your heart and go and work with those children, I know your country needs lots of help. Every time you do something for humanity, you will never fail to have a job in your life. So find what you want to do and go and do it. I said, thank you, sir, Mr. President. Keep praying about it. And that's what I do. And go. We founded Teach for Uganda after my stint in Washington, D.C., in New York, with my internships, all this together experience. And Teach for Uganda today, we like Teach for America. We hire university graduates, like FSU graduates, but from Uganda, Mama Cheri University, Barry University, hundreds of them. We have so far had 200 of them. They are working as teachers and leaders. So they teach in the classroom. To cover the gaps of teachers in my country, you will find that one school, you have a class of grade 1, 300 kids, 1 teacher. Which teacher can be effective if you're 1 teacher for 300 kids? So what Teach for Uganda does, it covers the gaps of teachers that we lack in my country. So we hire these young people, take them to these rural communities. They are some of the hardest rural communities you could imagine. There's no clean water, there's no electricity, but they go there and serve. When we started, it is I said the first in Africa. There was only Teach for Ghana at the time. Ghana in West Africa, here. Right when we were launching, we inspired Nigeria. So Uganda came, we launched. Today, because of our inspiration, right now I'm mentoring some in Niger, some in West Africa. Now we can talk of about tens of them. There's even Teach for Morocco and all kinds happening, about 12 of them now in Africa. I'm mentoring about 2 of them to launch Teach for their countries. Doing the same work. They teach, but they also mobilize the communities to appreciate the role of education in helping people improve their lives economically. That's what we do. When we started, we just started with 20. Today we are at 200. We were in the first region, we're in 4 regions of the country. And our dream is that by 2025, we are reaching 250,000 children with quality education. But all that wouldn't have happened had it not been for the foundations of this church. Maybe, I think this is the last one. Of course, through all that, we've galvanized wonderful people who are our boards of governors. This group here, led by the daughter of President Bush, these are our board of governors in America. We had board of directors in Uganda, these wonderful people, because we wanted to have governance systems that allow the organization not only to be reputable in Uganda, but also across the globe. And now we are reaching 20,000 children, but by 2025, we hope to be reaching 250,000. Maybe this is the last slide. Will come. I want to talk about this wonderful child because he inspires me so much and reminds me that God is with us. The first classroom I ever went to, after we had taken the teachers to start teaching, I came in to sit behind and just monitor the classroom and see how our teachers were teaching. And then one little boy was smart enough, he put up his hand, and the teacher asked him to come and write the answer on the chalkboard. We use chalk. So I noticed on his shirt, it says, "This is dog." And I said, "Am I seeing the right thing?" And then when he turned, behind his shirt, it was Florida State University. Then I knew that God is truly with what I am doing and what we are all doing for our children. And that was for me the proof that this was necessary. And as I read from Michelle Obama, I knew very well that what we are doing is right, that when you walk out through the door of opportunity, you never shut it back, but you help open it for others. And that's what I do. And thank you for your time. I think that is the last one. Thank you to Mama Judy, thank you to all of you for taking your time. I welcome questions, comments.
Well, I'm a little bit of an outsider here, but truly this all started because of the mission from St. John's.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's true.
yeah,
That's
that's
exactly
true.
right.
That's right.
It's just terrific.
Is Teach for America part of your, there's a group called Teach for America. I think.
Yes,
Is it
yes.
part of your thing?
Yeah, so when you start Teach for, and you want to be affiliated, you apply. So we applied and we went through all the protocols. You have to have good governance, you have to have good financial systems, you have to hire the right people. So once you meet all the criteria, you become the partner of Teach for All. Now the global organization is called Teach for All. So we are part of the 69. When I started, there were 40 in the world, only 2 in Africa. Now there are 60, with 12 in Africa. Yes, sir.
It seems like through your life, you've faced challenges and turned those challenges into opportunities. And I wondered now for you, what are the challenges with this organization or what you're trying to do?
Yeah, that's a great question. When we started, of course, nobody knew us and it was very hard. And even the government was not even aware of our work. We had to engage them because we work in public schools, because we believe that's where everyone comes. So the challenges that were major are, one, people don't know what you're doing, why are you even doing these graduates here? 2, financials, fundraising has been one of the most challenging. To this day, we are still fundraising. But 3, we also needed the approval of government, because we work with government. And finally, this March, government gave us a signature of MOU, which is a memorandum of understanding that Teach for Uganda, you are welcome to go across the country and help us improve the learning outcomes of children. So now the major things are really fundraising, raising the resources to reach those many children, and then to building the team that will go with you to the next mile. Yeah. So, but I'm blessed that so far the journey has been challenging, yes, but also a blessed one.
Tell us about some of your fundraising successes.
Yes, we've had some successes. That's a good one. But thank you.
Tell us about Ms. Jobs.
Yeah. Well, it's supposed this is recorded, so it's supposed to be anonymous.
Sorry, never mind.
So we get, and I didn't put the organizations here because I didn't know whether I was trying to gauge whether it was necessary or not. But the first funding we ever got that was wonderful, and there's a wonderful story of the US ambassador to Uganda, Her Excellency Deborah Malak. When she was speaking at a certain event in Kampala, and someone invited me to be there, and I remember she was leaving the stage, and I ran up to her, and I just could feel that this lady would understand what we were doing, and I ran up to her and said, Her Excellency Ambassador Malak, I'm James Kassaga Arinaitwe, I run Teach for Uganda. We are trying to educate children in rural communities. Please, don't worry, I have heard about it. Here is my card. If you like Teach for America, I would love to hear from you. I sent an email to her. When I got home, it's the first thing I did before I even got a cup of water. And then she reached out and sent her executive assistant and welcomed us into the embassy, go through a lot of security protocols to get to her. When she got us, hugged us with my colleague, and there was remaining $10,000, she said, give it to Teach for Uganda, but next year we're gonna go big. So that was in 2016. In 2017, she gave us $55,000. And the embassy, the US embassy was supportive right until 2010. When did Mr. Trump come in? Around that time when everything was changed. And we had a new ambassador, and now we are trying to engage afresh. But that is one of the successes. 2, we have had some anonymous successes of this is, please don't share it out, of the Apple, called the Emerson Collective. They are the Steve Jobs wonderful organization, which is not supposed to be shared out. So it's anonymous, but they came to Uganda in 2019, and thanks to Wendy of Teach for All, flew me to San Francisco, and this wonderful lady ran our jobs, and I was so nervous. I remember knowing what do I even say to her, and so all I could say is that, ma'am, I know it's very hard to understand why someone like me would end up here, but just one thing I could share, if it wasn't for education, and if I would share with you my entire story of being here, and I'm sure Wendy did, I wouldn't even have a chance. And so all I'm trying to do is ensuring that that door that was opened up for me, open it up for other children. That's why I'm here. She said, I want to know more. So I had to share the whole story. And Emerson have been supportive for every budget we raise. They take on 30% of that budget every year. Every year. So yes, now those have been someone, and actually it's ending in 2023 because it was a 5-year partnership. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Can you tell us how to give?
Yeah. I was waiting for that. So you can, there are 2 ways. You can give the check or cash, James Arinaitwe, but also put a memo, Teach for Uganda. Or we have also our online system, those who do online. So if you want to do online with your credit card, that one actually goes to our the Teach for All page where they do the tax deduction, tax deductible certificates. So I'll ask them to share that link. I'll share it with Claire, and they'll share the link with you as well. But you can do cash or check, but if you do the check, James Arinaitwe, memo, Teach for Uganda. Thank you so much for this.
Thank you.